Trainer Feed. We are your hosts. My name is Angel Sanchez. With me, I have Mr. Jacques Delager.
What's up, everyone?
And on today's episode, we would like to talk about cultures, team cultures, and joining a team. One of the things in personal training space, at least from what we went through, is that you go into a gym and you have a whole bunch of different personalities, different skill sets, and unlike other jobs, you could have a decent amount of downtime, and you also spend time with each other, like making food, cooking food, hanging out, early mornings, late nights, things like that, weekends. And you end up spending more time at the gym with those people than you actually do like your partner or your family members. So it is pretty interesting in that regard. Like a lot of people do like 9 to 5s, but at least they get ready in the morning with their family, get everybody set, ready to go. But in the training space, it's not really a 9 to 5 sort of deal. It's like you're there when people have free time. Therefore, your free time becomes when people go to work. Like it's just a weird sort of continuum. But with that, there becomes a culture and personalities that kind of mix with it, mesh with it, and some that kind of don't and clash. So, I wanted to ask you first, do you remember the moment that you felt like you were part of the team when we were working together?
Yeah, I think it was partly when I finally came off the floor. So I think that as a trainer, you've almost proven yourself first degree when you come off the floor. You are full-time. You're not just someone that's going to be there and be gone next month. And I think that's when people gave respect. I also think when people saw the surgeries, here we go again. When I didn't take much time off of the surgeries and I just wanted to walk, and I still want to work my business, I think people gave me a bit of respect for that. But I just think when people maybe could finally understand me, where the accent was a little hard, but I can't think of one particular incident where I think coming off the floor, being full-time was one of the things I can remember like being significant, and then becoming tier 3. And when you're at the meetings and they say, all right, it's a month, so these promotions have been from this tier to this tier, and people are. I think then we were at the same tier where you were still tier 3 plus, and I just turned tier 3, whatever it was. But I think that, and then also when starting to do mentorship as well. So I think when people see you as a valuable mentor, that I think just shows your value to the team. A keynote, and we did talk about this in another episode, I'm sure, but it's not the whole team, right? Like everyone's a little different. There are some people that are warmer to you than others, and people, that's just like in life anyway. It's the same with family. There's just people you naturally draw or gravitate more towards. What about you?
Yeah, it's interesting you said the thing about the mentorship, because I didn't really think about that at first, but that was definitely a milestone. And I'm not too sure if, like, how the managers pitched that, like if they pitched that to all the senior trainers, because I only remember, my conversation with the managers, but I don't remember, like, if everybody got that pitch. Because if not everybody got that pitch, then arguably some people were probably a little bit salty at first.
I think a lot of people would, but I feel if you were someone that wanted to, they would take it on, though, no?
Yeah, if you wanted to, but let's say there are some people who, I'm just trying not to name names, but there are some people who do not either...
they mesh differently or different
well, you wouldn't see them as like a mentor.
Yeah.
Right? You would see them as like they were top tier for sure, but just like get in, get out.
Yeah,
kind of like coach somebody to take them from wherever they're at.
To tell you the truth, that's kind of honestly where I'm at right now in my career.
Yeah.
I don't really mentor anyone. It's not that I don't want to. It's just that I don't know. I have less time than I did before, and back then I had a bit more time and was really into learning. And unfortunately, time is money. That sounds really bad, but I know this conversation has been brought up to any other trainer. But sometimes you do find yourself weighing up, why would I do this when I have an opportunity, I have a greater opportunity at the same time? Like, it doesn't even become a question of which one you're going to do, So without going too far down a rabbit hole, I think going back to what you said, not realizing that if not everyone was asked to mentor, but it was definitely a privilege to think that management would approach the likes of us and say, we think you're someone, because I think you had been in the club, what, one more year than me? I think 1 year prior.
I think so.
Right, about?
Yeah.
So if we had 2 to 4 years or so experience, right, collectively, then that's not a huge amount of time to then be, helping someone through their starting blocks. But I know I had someone that didn't work well with me, and they definitely saw you as a more senior mentor because you were able to take on cases or just scenarios that not everyone necessarily could handle. So I know there was that was given to you as well, because perhaps you're more senior, but just I think you are one of the better people in the club. You could work with anyone and everyone. When you talk about compatibility and people meshing, I don't think there's anyone that could be paired with you and not work well. Whereas me, I think there's a small 10% of people that, I'm not saying I wouldn't work with them, but it wouldn't be that effective. Whereas I saw my own eyes when someone, having come from working with me to you still got them to go on the straight and narrow. So that's another thing as well, that like people don't always maybe associate with you, but is the case.
That's interesting. Well, I don't know. I definitely think like there are matches where you just meet people and you're just like, all right, these two are going to work well together, and then there are mismatches, and I did work with some people on like smaller leadership roles prior to this job or that job, so I think that also helped me too, like having difficult conversations with people and having to have that conversation, because if you don't have it, then it's like things are just going to keep
escalating.
Exactly. So yeah. I learned pretty quickly and at an early age that it's better to have those conversations than not to, and then like how to broach them depending on what the situation is. But going back to the original thing about understanding like where you are in the culture and of the team and whatnot, I remember vividly there was that point where I felt like definitely the mentorship thing that you brought up. I think that was one big point. I think the other thing was like I forget what I was doing, but I had gone through the process, but I think I was like tier 2. I wasn't even like tier 3 or tier 3 plus or whatever. Like I think I was tier 2, and Diana came up to me, and Diana was just like, she was like, "You're part of the team," and I was like, kind of like taken aback, and she was like, we like the way you're working, want you to stay here, do whatever you need to do, but don't quit, like don't stop doing this, because you're part of the team, you're part of the culture, and you're one of us. And I was just like, in my head I was kind of like taken aback, and then I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I guess I kind of felt a little bit alienated, because like it's a different group and you don't know where you stand, and that point in the Jim's career was all over the place, because you remember it was like some people were being held to one standard and then others were being held to another. There were people who were like senior trainers, quote unquote, but like doing like 3 sessions in and out, and it was like, what's that about? Or like,
it's hard as if you're ramping up and you see that, you're
like, how does that work? Like, is that person like more senior than the senior people? Because there's like people who are here all day and they're making a whole bunch of money from training, but then you see other people just like doing their own thing. You're just like, wait, how does that even work? And then people who have different, our gym was especially like kind of special in that sense, because they had like people going from one club to another club, and that was supposed to be like not happening.
And now it's a thing, but
right now it's a thing.
Now I think
before it was just like not ever, nobody's supposed to do that. But then, so like that was a important moment for me, because this was somebody who, was a senior trainer, somebody that I looked up to, somebody that I respected. She had an NSCA cert, I had an NSCA cert. I think I was going for my CSCS at the time, and like I kind of like I understood, the exercise science portion about it a little bit more than other trainers, but I also didn't feel like the business was coming as quickly as it should have, just based on like the knowledge. But I think that came later. That definitely came later, where I had like more business savvy approach to my training, and then I understood like there were some things my managers told me to say and do, and I'm not gonna name names or anything like that, but that shit didn't work. Some things were definitely...
It's not cookie cutter, right?
It's not cookie cutter, that's the thing. And sometimes people pitch it like, oh, just do this. And you do it because you're, young and trying to build your business.
You
and
listen
realize,
to your superiors and you think it's the best.
And it just wasn't.
Because that was
your own way to communicate with people. But if they said that from the beginning, then I would have been like, oh, okay, that's perfect.
I guess I don't want to leave you too much to the thought of imagination, because then you could just make any old up shit. But I think when I started mentoring people, one thing I told them, and I still tell them to this day, I said, I've always been terrible at selling. And to a former guest we've had on, when I went and I interviewed him, but went and asked him and spoke with him for questions and this and that, and I was like, what's your weakness? Because you're very successful, but everyone's got weaknesses. And I had an aha moment, or like a feeling of, I don't know, like, I can't think of the word, but when he said his weakness was the same as mine selling, I was like, wow, so you can be successful in this industry and have a weakness such as that. Because I always thought from, like you said, prior people telling us from above that you're not be successful if you can't sell, whilst that is somewhat true because you will struggle, but it's not the end all be all.
Right.
And when someone asks me, they say, oh, how did you sell? I'll tell them, honestly, I still suck at selling, but I just don't waste my time anymore. And I had this conversation with someone recently when they were saying, oh, I had the initial assessment with someone who's 22, and there's nothing wrong with training someone who's 22, but sometimes in New York City, someone in that age range is just, they're sharing an apartment with a few people, it's their first job, like they're not always in the financially best spot to be training, and that's not, we would never take them on, but it's just something that can be found to be quite common. So, in this example, when this trainer tells me, oh, it's 22, okay, you need to change your conversation and not spend an hour with this person who is not going to... It's just very hard for a trainer to invest time in someone who's not going to invest money in you, right? If you invest 10 minutes of that time, this might be a little bit cutthroat, but to me now, I'm not spending an hour with someone who's not spending money on me. And that sounds a little cutthroat and insensitive, but that's the conversation I have with this trainer. Because she was saying, oh, I spend an hour with this person doing the assessment, and then an hour doing the free session, and they don't even buy it. I was like, all right, you got to change that. You have to change it to within 10 minutes in, all right, this is the program I'm going to be designing. What sort of frequency are you thinking? Because then I can scale the program on. You get that feeler of how frequent the person is trying to train. Right. Now, this is not an end-all be-all design or approach. It's just something I've had to do to get better at sensing who wants to work with me. Because my selling is so bad, that's kind of, but we know people that have...
We've done that before, too, where, like, on the tail end of when I was there, we were speaking about stuff like that, where you would spend a lot of time with people, specifically because... At my former role and your current role, you would give complimentary sessions that would take upwards of like 3-4 hours.
2 hours for an assessment, an hour for a review, and then you would do an hour comp session. And as you said, that's like 3-4 hours at this point.
Yeah, it's 4 hours if you include the work that you have to do in order to prepare for that.
That's excluding the work, so add more time. So you're talking like 5 or 6 hours per person.
Yeah. So that was also a pain in the ass too, because then you would, but it's a bigger investment. So you would have to almost analyze the person and figure out where they are, and then just say, listen, like, this is what it is. And it's better. It's almost better. Like, if I were to do it now, like when I was starting, like the last thing you do is show the price card, right? But if I were to do it now, it's almost like the first thing I would do.
Just show them.
Because I even get, clients now where, I'll tell them the price, and they'll say, oh, can you do this? Oh, can you do that? And it's like, no, this is unfortunately and fortunately, this is my rate.
Yeah, this is it.
And, I know other people who might do it for cheaper. If you want a referral, I can send them your way.
Yeah.
Exactly. But, like, I'm not going to cut back because I know that I'm going to give so much for that person.
Right.
I'm going to do the research. I'm going to reach out to people. I'm going to use the network to make stuff happen. And I know that the last thing I want to do is just... I've been there before where you're just like, you see the person's name on your schedule and you're just like, here we go. And then you have to do that whole thing.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have to be that way. It should just be like, this is what's happening.
This is it.
You got to get paid for your time, for your work, and not sell yourself short.
I mean, also, it's hard. It's hard the hardest thing about this industry is if we don't work, we don't get paid, typically.
Right.
And more senior levels, it can be a little better or a little safer, but you gotta, it's... I try and be flexible if and when I can, but sometimes you can't, and then you just have to work with a person, you know. I think you have, in terms of like scheduling as well, like or saying this is the way it is. It's like, no, like this is my living. This is how I pay the bills,
Right.
you know. And we do it this way, we'll do it that way, kind of thing. I don't even want to go down a rabbit hole or anything, but I just think that like what I was gonna get to was kind of what you're saying about if someone's asking the price, if you can monitor, it's like you get what you pay for, like in terms of you get out what you put in. Sorry, when you pay for a session, we're not the lowest level tier trainer, and there's no disrespect to those trainers, but they have less experience, so everything goes with experience, right? If you're someone who's 1 year in, you've seen less clients than yourself, correct? Or less clients than me, or than David. If someone has worked for that extended period of time, they've likely seen an injury from almost every single joint in the body at that point, right? Not for sure, very likely. And that's kind of what you're paying for, is someone who's just got the greater expertise, who's seen more different cases. Or, you know, when it was my first female client going through pregnancy, and I had done the pre-postnatal maybe about 6 months or a year prior, I was like, all right, here we go, everything I learned. And, you know, now it helps to tell a female client, that you have helped. Like, I love the fact I've helped a client through before pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, post-pregnancy. You've walked with them, and I think female clients especially get that not comfortable feeling, but they know that you knew how to walk with their body through all stages of pregnancy, right? Pre, during, post. And that's a big thing. I think that goes a long way. I don't know where I was going with this. But once you got that experience, rabbit hole. Once you have the experience, you can say, boom. Because there was someone else recently I was working with. They're like, oh, do you have pre-post? I was like, yeah. I even forget I have it because it's been so long and I've been doing it for so long. But when they say certs and certifications, I'm like, what do you have? And I'm like, I mean, kind of not everything, but
no, but
the big dogs, so you have it.
Exactly.
Right. Anything now is it has its worth, but the mainstays, like you try and get those in early, so then you can appeal to more clients.
Right. Yeah, and that goes to another topic completely, but it's like continuing education and understanding how much to put in. But it is, you know, for some people who don't find success in the industry, it's a little bit risky because obviously some of these courses can cost a decent amount of money.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, then it's kind of like, what am I going to do?
Vicious circle.
Like, how does it work, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that, you know, that's a whole separate conversation. But in regards to like culture and like adding to the culture and the teams that you're with, so, you know, for those who are embarking on this journey and finding themselves with new teams, there's a lot of people who are like Instagram fitness people or TikTok fitness people who are starting to venture into the workforce and try to, you know, make money off their training and go into big box gyms or smaller studios. It's important to kind of realize who you are early, what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, and work on yourself, right? Work on yourself and adding value to the team that you're in. I think a lot of people who get frustrated, because I remember there were a lot of rampers who got frustrated and didn't really like the team or certain members of the team. Like, you have to understand when you walk in through those doors, not everybody's going to like you. And some people didn't even talk to us for the first time. Like,
because there's a lot of turnover.
There's a lot of turnover.
And you're going to remember someone's name?
It's not worth it for those senior people, unfortunately.
If you got in 2 weeks.
The honest truth. Yeah, the honest truth is it's not worth it for them to, like, remember your name, where you're from, all this stuff, and then you're just gone in 2 weeks because the turnover rate is super high. And, you know, almost respect that. And depending on, like, what industry you're in, you might see something similar, but I think that, you know, sticking to your own values, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not so good at, and working on that, people can see that growth, like, no matter who you are, and then just being yourself. Like, don't try to make yourself into something to fit a certain, you know, role or fit a certain culture.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely think that you should, you know, voice your opinions if you need to. Definitely stick up for yourself for sure. But, you know, I've always been like the path of least resistance because there's so much that I need to work on for myself in any given role that it doesn't seem like it's worth it to kind of like cause static with everybody who disagrees with me personally. But, you know, just do what you got to do. Like, if, you know, even if there's like a conversation that's going on, and it's like, because I've walked in on some conversations and I'm just like, nah, I'm not going to be a part of this, and I just walk out of the room because I'm just like, I'm just not, right? I'm not going to sit there and say, you know what's wrong with you, or you know what the problem is. Like, I know those people for sure. I think we all do. It's like, you know what your problem is? Like, but I'm not necessarily that person. I would rather just leave the room, and that also sends a message as well. It's like, I opt out of this. You don't have to be part of every single thing that goes on. But making sure to work on yourself, making sure to do the things that you got to do in order to help the team, I find beneficial for like meshing with everybody.
Yeah, and ultimately being a sponge, as you mentioned in a previous episode about David as well, being a sponge. I think when Diana spoke to me, and you kind of said something similar to what I think she said to me, I imagine, like, you're part of the team, or we like your training, or you're smart about your training. That meant a lot coming from who Diana is. And where the fuck I was going with this again? I am losing my train of thought. Just being open to learning. And I think she said this as well, being open to feedback. Like, the more open to feedback, the more successful you're going to be here. And when I heard that, it clicked. I was like, okay, like, it's not going to be easy when someone says, like, for example, when someone saw how I was coaching a client through a squat, and they were nice enough, and we're still friends with this guy. It was Kelly, actually. He was really nice about it. He was like, I don't know if you should do that. I was like, really? He's like, you're not really fixing the problem. Like, you're just kind of, like, masking it. I was like, okay, what should I do next time? He was to walk me through it. And I was like, all right, that I appreciated. And also, let's be clear, the way to do it is not put someone on blast in front of that client as well. It's see how they do it.
That's for sure.
Note it when they're by themselves, because it doesn't look good, and it makes the trainer look inferior. And then what you can do instead, as I just mentioned, like what happened to me, when Kelly next saw me, he's like, I think you should do this differently. And then you don't look silly in front of that client, because if you went back to the client, you'd be like, all right, well, what we did last time, I think we have something that might work better. And it's not and you have that transparency with the client anyway, and say, like, I'm not always going to be 100% on it, right, in terms of like knowing exactly what's the best right for you right now, right for your condition or injury, for example. But I'm going to try. I think this might be able to work better, and if not, we'll go back to the drawing board. So I think that was just another thing as well I want to mention, that was definitely something that helped me. And even if it's eating you up to just go, no, don't do that, like, do not do it. Don't be that person.
And also, like, to that point, there are some people who call you out, or some people who do like dick moves. Like, for example, I won't say his name, although I think I'd said it on this podcast already. Somebody was playing a video, and they sent me the video. Everybody was laughing or whatever, and they were like, "Oh, just check this video out." And so I was in the locker room, and I put the video on, but I didn't have my headphones on. It was just like somebody was like, "Please, please watch." It could have been David with the stupid dog. And so I put it on, and I'm looking at the phone. And then the other person walks in, and they get annoyed that the phone is on speaker. And so they grab their headphones and they throw it at me. And they said, I'm not going to say like how the person said it, but they said, these are headphones. Try to give these a try sometime.
Wow. We know this person?
Yeah, you know this person. I'm sure, like, when I tell you the person off air, you're going to be like, all right, that's not surprising.
Oh, I think I know who it is. All right.
I think I know who it makes sense.
Yeah, I think I know who it is.
But, it's like, understand, like, sometimes people shit on you. Sometimes people, like, call you out. And, when you're trying to, like, mesh with a team, it's difficult to know when people are trying to, like, punk you and, like, be that person. Or when people are just like having a bad day, or they're grumpy or what have you.
Yeah, I know who this is.
So it's also important to kind of like put that aside. Like, you have that conversation, like be the bigger person, and have that conversation off air or offline with that person one-on-one. Because even if they did something as a group, it doesn't mean that you call them out as a group just for the sake of like getting a rile up. At the same time, if it's like very disrespectful, like definitely stand up for yourself and don't like whatever, but don't just take shit just to take shit.
Serious.
But I think for that person in specific, I had understood who that person was up until that point. I knew that every day that they came in, they weren't the most merry of people, and I understood that. And when they did that whole situation, I'm like, all right, this person,
is a certain way,
is a certain way, and I do have a problem with it, but I'm not going to make it a thing. I'm going to talk to that person offline, and it'll be fine, right? Because it's not like I was just getting ripped on the first day one or something like that. And even if it was, I'd be like, maybe this place isn't for me.
Yeah, maybe they were totally something different.
Exactly. Anywho, that's about it for this episode. We'll wrap it up.
Thanks for listening, team.
Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Bye, guys. Peace.